Tom, welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks. You?
Yeah, very well indeed, very well. So, in a few weeks' time, the two of us, alongside Will Burkett, will be sat on a socially distant sofa at Kendal Mountain Festival. But before then, we thought we'd just have a quick catch up with a few of my own questions and a few questions from the evergreen UKC audience about the classic rock round, which has sort of overtaken the UKC news reports of 2020. But to kick things off, you're known for doing a great many things. You know, we're talking hard climbing, even harder training, wide cracks, even wider cracks. Where the hell did running come from?
Where did running come from? I'm not entirely sure actually. It was more like it was born out of a concept that I thought of or imagined many years ago, and I didn't have the time to be able to go and do it. And this was this concept about combining really long distance running with like multi-pitch mountain routes soloing into some like really big 24-hour style challenges. And I kind of let that idea brew for years and years. I must have come up with it at least 5 years ago. And so the running really came out of necessity from that, because I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything unless I do some running.
I guess it comes from it's like a turbo Brown Willans, isn't it? The Lake District Classic Rock Challenge, because more routes, more mileage, more bigger routes as well.
Yeah, in a way, it's really similar. It's probably a little bit more akin to the East and West Brown and Willans challenge that me and Pete did years ago, except that rather than we were driving with a car between some of the crags there, this one is just in between it. And then the last one I did with Pete, that went up to E6 in terms of rock difficulty, whereas this one's much lower in rock standard. So the difficulty is weighted more, I suppose, more heavily on the running perhaps than the climbing on this one. Although there's, I suppose, some difficulty associated with soloing.
So on the note of the challenge itself, tell us a little bit about it in terms of the miles you've got to cover, the sort of routes you've got to cover, and so on and so forth.
So in a nutshell, the whole challenge is to get from or complete all of the classic rock routes in the lakes from in a day, in 24 hours. And you've got to be self-supported. So, no friends turning up, handing you out water, food, driving you between crags, belaying you, just generally assisting you. It's kind of like a proper full-on solo day out. And you've got to do every route in kind of actually whatever order you want, but self-propel. So run, walk, trudge between all of those routes. And typically it's not a round, so it's not a circle and you start back at the same point. You start at one end of the Lake District, which is Dow Crag, and you finish in Borrowdale at Little Chamonix.
Wowzers. Well, the first question we've had from our audience is, how do you balance running and climbing? And I'm aware this is a potentially long and complex question because I know that the answer is a potentially even longer article form to be written about this.
The short answer is not very well. So as I got increasingly good at running, I got increasingly bad at climbing. I kind of was of the opinion beforehand that it's not very realistic to be good at running and also good at climbing. I'm after a good, solid condensed year and a half of trying to do both. I'm very much the opinion that you can't do both at a really high level.
I think the other issue as well is the style of running you have taken up as well. I mean, long distance running. There's no way of getting good at long distance running without putting in a lot of miles. And a lot of miles is a lot of time. Yeah. And a lot of time is a lot of exhaustion, which doesn't necessarily leave you with plenty of energy left for your max hang session at the end of it.
No, it's all sorts of compromises and conflicts on that front. And like my running in big weeks, it was 100-mile weeks, and sometimes that was 100 miles of off-road 100 miles, so it wasn't just road. So there's a lot of time and effort, and yeah, I was pretty knackered.
I was just about to ask, actually, in terms of elevation, did you ever have sort of like any height gain ambitions for each week, or did you go?
No, I didn't. I kind of just did that by feel, actually, on the elevation thing. I wasn't probably that technical about how, I think because I was going forward quite quickly and I was getting better at a reasonable rate, I didn't feel like it was necessary to be too analytical about it. About the only thing I did was I had like a box stepping exercise that I try and do like a vertical kilometre and try and get faster and faster at doing that. But that was about the only thing that I did, which was a bit more analytical.
So that was like the crack cellar of the running world.
Yeah, I had a step in my house and I would do VKs on it, like sweating it out in the kitchen. I'd like be there in my boxer shorts, and everyone else in the house would be like trying to get on with normal activities, and I'm there just pouring a sweat doing a VK in the steps. It's on the side of the kitchen, so it's kind of hot.
It'd save on heating bills as well, wouldn't it, throughout the winter months?
Well, you say this, but what I had to do was open a Velux window and a side window behind me on the stairs to kind of get a breeze through so I could cope with it.
Hey, so the next question is, I'm actually going to adapt, so apologies to the person who wrote this one in, but the question was actually, what's the scariest climb ever? But I thought we'd adapt that in reference to the Classic Rock round of, was there a climb that you, on the Classic Rock round, that you sort of liked the least, or maybe found the sort of scariest to step off on? Because, whilst you're soloing, of course, all it takes is a bit of polish or a slightly insecure section to make them feel really pretty out there.
I'd say there's one move on Jones's route, which I never felt like you could do it. Like I have a really safe sort of soloing style in a way. And I think most people do a lot of soloing. They have like an adapted way of climbing versus, when you're with a rope. But there's one move basically after the traverse coming out of that route that's just really hard to. You basically just have two moves where you're pressing, so you're relying on a lot of press style move rather than hang and crimp and yard on something.
You know where you stand with a good in-cut hold, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. So I was always a bit aware on that one that had to be kind of careful on it. And not, slip or whatever.
And how did you, because this is, I've never combined running and climbing in the way that you have, but I can only imagine that after running essentially what is, a marathon and more, that your legs, for instance, when you're, padding up on those small footholds, your calves may be feeling a little fatigued. Did that influence things at all?
No, not at all, actually. Absolutely no effect. In fact, it was really nice to go onto some climbing after doing the running, and I found almost in some ways I think it almost makes it feel easier because you swap in and out of the styles. So no, I didn't find any effect on that.
That's that vertical kilometre on the box of doom coming back to pay dividends.
Maybe, I don't know.
So next question, which is partly my own and partly from the audience. So how do you go about sustaining yourself on these big days out? And I remember, and I can't remember the gist of it exactly, but you drinking a lot of milk whilst running, which to me sounded horrendous. But it did lead one person to ask, what is the recipe for your brown cow recovery drink? So two-stage question there. What the hell are you eating and drinking? And what on earth, Tom, is the brown cow recovery drink?
Okay, let's start with the most important thing, which is the brown cow. So I grew up in South Africa, and a very popular drink out there is the brown cow, which is a mixture of full-fat milk and full-fat Coke. So you can't use Diet Coke or anything like that. Although, interestingly, you can use Pepsi Max. It seems to work for some reason. Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke, just awful. And it's traditionally a 50-50 mix of full-fat milk and Coke. But I think it's slightly better if you go to 5/8 and 3/8. And you have to put the milk in first and put the Coke on afterwards. And it creates this amazing, you get like a head on it. So it's like a non-alcoholic, really, you think of like Pope's extra smooth bitter with just the creamiest, smoothest head on it. And it's just amazing, refreshing drink. That's a brown cow. It's just one of the best things ever.
Wow, is that coming up in the next Lattice nutrition article we'll be publishing on site?
No, although it's funny, I've had some kind of messages that people sent me just appalled that I would even eat and sort of drink in that way. But then other people who've messaged me and gone, actually, it's not the worst thing in the world because you've got a load of protein in it and you've also got a load of sugars in it. So yeah, as a recovery drink, there isn't that much of a problem with it.
Many years ago, when I ran Paddy Buckley, the Welsh 24-hour round, I think I sustained myself on those Tyrrell's salt and vinegar crisps, just because a bit of fat, bit of salt. But, I'm sure if you said that to some sports nutritionists, they'll probably look at me like I've committed a heinous crime.
Yeah. I think, but in terms of general eating, it was really variable, actually. I never seemed to kind of quite get a perfect recipe. And one of the classic rock round kind of attempt records I went out with, I decided to go out with 2 bags of boiled sweets, which, like, I went into the supermarket. I do remember looking at the back of them going, oh, there's quite a lot of calories in there. That'll be fine. And then when I added it up afterwards, I was like, oh no, that wasn't really quite good enough. And I felt so sick. I only ever got through 1 bag of them anyway. So I tried that one time. Another time I tried taking, I think it was a load of like chocolate brioche with me as well. And that just didn't go that well. And one of my most successful ones was went out with a whole, I can't remember if it's Henry or Boris, the chocolate caterpillar cake from Morrison's. But it's like a long tubular birthday cake. And it was great because it fitted in my rucksack like a sort of a tube. And I just would put my hand in the top of the box. So I never took it out of the box. And I just kind of like feed myself mouthfuls of this chocolate caterpillar cake all the way around, which actually worked pretty well. So not very formulaic.
You heard it here first. Right, Tom, we'll round off with 3 quick fire questions. And because this is the internet, when you ask people, have you got any questions for Tom Randall? The sort of stuff you get back is stuff like this. So, Tom, question number 1, will you grow a moustache?
No.
Okay, well, that's that one. Ever thought about a beard?
No.
Well, that's that one. Next one, it isn't so much a question as it is a single line simply saying crack climbing is basically aid.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought as well, really. And the third question, which we got twice, by the way, is when will you get Ondra in the cellar?
Oh, that is a good question. I'll give you better than a no. I think that's a yes, potentially. Pete was actually messaging him. So he's been chatting to him. And in principle, I think he was semi-keen. Although I think he knows there's going to be some level of sandbagging and setting up. And you know how Adam likes to look good. And I think he'll back down in the end. I think he just won't want the shame of getting burnt off by me and Pete in the cellar. So I'd like to say that it's just not going to do it, even though I think he'll come to the UK and it'll nearly happen unless we can set him up with something that entices him in. I'm not sure.
Okay, set him up or chloroform Adam Ondra, get him into the cellar, and when he comes to, we'll put the camera straight onto him. I don't think we're allowed to say that. Right, well...
You said it.
Oh, yeah, it's on my shed now. Right, Tom, really good to catch up anyway, and look forward to chatting in further detail in a few weeks' time at Kendal.
Yeah, cool. Speak to you soon, Rob.
Bye. Right.
Bye.